feel like I was very inquisitive about,
Yeah.
needles
Yep.
because of mum. Um, I still, at the end of the day, I made my own decision this night to try it, and so I volunteered to go first. I remember he mixed it up on the bottom of a Coke can, and it was 4 points. So
Jesus.
I'd no, like I said, I had no idea about this shit. I didn't even know what it had. No idea
First
what it
time
even
and he
did
just
to
mixed
me.
up 4 points. That's a lot.
Yeah, well, we split it, so I had two and
Still,
he had two,
still,
and
still a
but I
lot.
volunteered. Yeah, man. Yeah, well, what I'm about to tell you will explain that. I I volunteered to go first. Obviously, I didn't want. I'd never stuck a needle in my body at this point ever, and I thought I didn't want him doing it and then trying to do me while he's fucked up. So I went first, and all I remember, bro, it was in my right arm. I literally remember, like, the best way to describe it was like, when you get real dizzy and everything sort of goes when you're real dizzy. It was like that, but it was like upways. So I've gone to stand up and literally like, whoa, and then that's all I remember. I must have collapsed, and the next thing you know, I've woken up with three paramedics standing over the top of me and all these stickers all over me. All my top was cut off me, and I had all these stickers on me. But I won't lie, bro. I woke up feeling fucking
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Like, the most crazy euphoric feeling I've ever felt in my life to this day. I'm laying on the floor in between these two beds, and my little brother's on the bed, like fucking bawling his eyes out, like sobbing his heart out. And I'm so I started laughing at him. What's going on? Like, what are these paramedics doing here? Little did I know, I'd been dead, man. My heart had stopped. My little brother was trying to revive me for the last 15 minutes till the paramedics got there. Uh,
Jesus.
yeah, I I ended up, the paramedics wanted me to go with them back to the hospital, and I was like, nah, I'm right, just leave me alone, sort of thing. And I ended up jumping into bed and going to sleep after they left. And this whole time, I cannot remember where the guy is that did it to me. I don't know if he's in the room, if he's gone. Still don't know. It was all a big blur, but I wake up the next morning at 10 a.m. to someone banging on the hotel door. It was the guy, time to check out. Um, so I woke up like all of a sudden, like, oh shit, we got pipes and bags and crumbs from drugs laying around all throughout this hotel. We'd gone hard for the last 5 or 6 days. I've woken up on the bed. My little brother's asleep on the other bed, and the guy I did it with laying on the floorboards between us. I've sort of woken up, and I noticed he had a bit of brown fluid coming out of his mouth. Um, I'd forgotten that we'd even done it the night before. It had sort of slapped me around the head that hard. Anyway, so I've woke my brother up. Quick, get up, we've got to get out of here. We've got to clean this room up. Not realising that, I'm slapping old mate on the floor. Wake up, bro. He wouldn't wake up, so we continued to clean the room, and I've gone back to him, and I ended up picking him up. He was sort of laying on
Mm.
his stomach in the fetal position type thing. It's hard to explain, but I ended up grabbing him off the floor. I sort of grabbed him around here with his back facing to me, and I've picked him up. Oh, wake the fuck up, bro. Like, he wouldn't wake up. And then it just hit me, bro. Like, he was full dead weight. His skin was already cold, and yeah, he was dead, bro. Me being the
Jesus.
big brother, you would have expected me. Yeah, you would have expected me to be the one to, try and revive this guy, man. But I went into shock. I stood there and watched my little brother pump this guy's chest. He had the ambulance on the loudspeaker next to this guy's head and pumping his chest, giving him mouth to mouth. All this brown fluids coming up, going into my brother's mouth and everything. It was hectic. Like, but yeah, he didn't make it, bro.
Wow.
So it was my first experience with
Jeez.
needles.
What is happening, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of the Real Drug Talk podcast, where we talk about all things drugs, alcohol, addiction recovery, and anything else interesting in the space. What a story we have for you today. Massive story from a guy named Tonksy, who is blowing up on the internet. And there's a reason for it, because his story is super interesting, extreme. He's got some really sad and harrowing stories, and some really interesting insights as well. So before I tell you a bit more about that, as always, this show is brought to you by Connection-Based Living, which is our outpatient coaching program that we run for people who want to get recovery without having to go to rehab and without having to check out of their life for a month to 2 to 3 to 6 months at a time. You can achieve recovery in a different way, but it requires commitment and action and intent on your behalf. But with the right coaching and support, you can get change without having to go through those traditional pathways. So if that's of interest to you and you're somebody that does want to make some changes, but doesn't connect with the traditional approaches, we might be able to help. So that's Connection-Based Living. That's who the show's brought to you by today. Check out the links in the description. Book a call. Look, we just have a chat. There's no obligations or anything like that. We'll just see if our programs fit for you and if they can be the right sort of help. And if not, we'll point you in the right direction. Okay, so that's Connection-Based Living. Check out those in the description. But today's chat was awesome. I really loved it. This guy, his humility comes across in the conversation, and I felt it through the computer. And I think it comes from, the big story that he's had and the ups and downs in his life that he's had with addiction and, all the things that he's faced prior to that addiction as well. So, really interesting show today and really excited for you guys to listen to it. So, look, I won't rabbit on too much more. But I hope you guys like the shows that we're putting out. We're going to be aiming for 2 a week and coming back in a big way. Really excited to have your support. If you like what we're putting out and what we're putting down, leave us a review. We record everything all online. So today, the program that we used, there was a little bit of a delay gap and I'm jumping in a little bit early. So that could be a little bit annoying, but it's not too much. So keep that in mind as well when you're listening. Sometimes the software fails us, but it's a good show nonetheless. So if you like what we're putting down, we'd love it for you if you could leave us a review on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you listen to us. And we'll be putting out some more clips on YouTube as well. So stay tuned and watch the channel there. You can watch bite-sized episodes of the podcast so that we can get the information out to more people. But anyway, nevertheless, let's jump into the show and look forward to vibing in your ears again soon. Peace. Boom. What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Real Drug Talk, where we talk about all things drugs, alcohol, addiction recovery, and anything else interesting in the space. Today we've got Braden on the show, also commonly known on the internet as Tonksy. How are you, mate?
I'm good, brother. Definitely better than I have been in the past. That's
Yeah,
for
good,
sure.
mate.
How
Good,
are you?
mate. As we were saying before, we just had some technical issues, but I'm in freezing cold Melbourne, and you're up on the nice warm coast. But you're from Tassie, is that right?
I am from Tassie, bro. A suburb by the name of Claremont in the northern suburbs of
Nice.
Hobart. But like I did say to you before, I have spent a year in Melbourne as well.
You know it well. Nice.
Yeah, I do, mate.
So, hey, how we start off the show is putting people on the spot a little bit with getting the 3-minute version of their story, if we can, and then we riff from that. So, if you were to jump in an elevator with someone, you had 3 minutes to the top level. How would you tell them your story?
Well, mate, I've never really been put on the spot like this before, but I mean, if I could jam it into 3 minutes, I'll give it a crack anyway. But so as I said, I was born in Claremont, a suburb in the northern suburbs of Hobart, in the southern of Tassie. There, Claremont is, had a bit of a reputation as a bit of a bad sort of suburb, but there was also a good side to Claremont as well. Mate, I grew up. I am the eldest of 4. There's me, a sister, a brother, and then a little sister. I was sort of, being the eldest, I was sort of given that role as like to try to be a role model for the rest of them, but it didn't go like that, mate, whatsoever. So, by the age of 12, I was smoking weed, um, cigarettes, weed. Um, you know, I was always, I was actually had this conversation with my missus there yesterday. I was actually pretty good at school, man. I'm good at maths, I'm good at spelling and all that. But sort of around the ages of like 14, 15, year eight, year nine, I sort of started to give school up a little bit, and sort of, around that age too, ecstasy was starting to become a big thing in Tassie. And before you knew it, mate, I was, you know, going to parties, and I was the guy with the pocket full of pingers,
Yeah.
sort of thing. Um, I was around a lot of domestic violence as a kid. I believe that sort of shaped me into the person that I ended up becoming. I mean, it's a typical stereotypic sort of story, but unfortunately, that's the sort of life that I lived as a child. Around so if I can remember correctly, around the age of 16, I got with my I have two daughters to a chick. I got with her around the age of
Yep.
16 and moved out of home, straight away, and had our own little place. I was also a apprentice
Yep.
sheet metal worker at 16. So on the outside, it looked all right. I looked like I was doing all right, but as I said, I was sort of around a lot of shit that a child shouldn't have seen,
Yep.
from a young age. Um, yeah, and sort of we sort of kicked it off by the age of 19. I had my first daughter, Amali. A lot of people will agree that a bit young to have a child, but we felt we were ready, and we raised her. She's turned into a beautiful young teenager now. But this ain't to mention, at 18 years old, I'm hitting up the clubs in Hobart. I ended up with a pretty heavy reputation as the guy with the drugs.
Yep.
Like I said, ecstasy was a big thing, bro. In Tassie, along with the old school speed, but that wasn't really a big thing of mine. It was more the pills, and if I can put it short, I ended up with life bans from most of the nightclubs
Yep.
throughout Hobart. Either through selling drugs or fighting. I was, you mix a drink and some pills with me in a nightclub, I 9 times out of 10 guarantee you that I'll end up
Yep.
in a punch
Yep.
up.
Yeah.
So I ended up. I remember one time I was in a nightclub by the name of Ivory Lounge Bar. It was sort of the notorious nightclub of Hobart. That all the bad guys would end up at the end
Yep.
of the night, sort of thing. And as I said, I had this reputation of the guy with all the pills and whatnot. And I remember this one time I'd gone in there, and there was, like, how do I put it without sounding like a dickhead? There was like a bit of a VIP area, up behind the DJ in this nightclub, and we all used to sort of hang out there. And obviously, the guy with the drugs, I'd literally some nights, bro, have people lining up. That's how big the reputation got, lining up to get stuff off me. And I remember this one guy, he's come up to me. I was at the bar, and he's like the tap on the shoulder. I turned around, and this guy's like beaming. He's got these big eyes, and he's like, "Oh, I heard you're the one with the drugs. Can I get a 10-pack off you?" It's like, yeah, no worries. I'll meet you in the toilet at 5. The old meet him in the cubicle, and well, I've gone in there. I've gone in there, and I said, "Come in here." We've gone in the cubicle, locked it. As soon as I turned back around, he pulled a badge out. And but it was funny, this story, because I ended up he ended up taking me back to the station. Long story short, I said to him, I was a lot bigger than this guy too. I sort of said to him, he's like, I can arrest you here and pretty much embarrass you walking back through the nightclub, or you can just, obey my orders and come with me. So I did that. I went back to the station. They got me with 150 ecstasy pills, wrote me up like a bail notice, and said that I'll receive a summons in the mail at a later date to go to court. Well, I'm shitting myself. I didn't have a criminal record whatsoever. I was, maybe a couple of driving charges here and there, or a speeding ticket or a parking ticket. That was it. And so, for the next few months, I'm shitting myself waiting for this summons to come to go to court. Well, it never come. to this day, I never heard a word about it.
Right.
Like, you tell me.
Interesting. They just wanted the pills.
Yeah, so, well, I can guarantee they had a few good weekends after that, mate, the Hobart police, that's for sure.
Yeah. That's funny, man. So you're right in the thick of it, it sounds like. Flashing forward, how did you, like, where did things get to at their lowest?
Yeah, so by the age of 23, we'd had another daughter, Harlow. So she was born when I was 21. So 19 and 21, I became a father. And yeah, around the age of 23, you know, I was always still going out, you know, running amok on the missus while she was staying at home with the kids and whatnot. And I'd gone back to this party after the nightclubs one night, you know, and I'd never you heard that ice was getting around, but it never had a label like it has today. You know, methamphetamine, and it was just like, I remember these guys were at this house were passing a glass pipe around, you know, and come my turn, I didn't even know how to do it. I didn't even, you know, you're supposed to light it and melt it. I just sucked on this thing and sucked all the dry rocks back into my throat, you know. But little did I know that was the start of a 10-year-long hectic meth addiction that, you know, eventually led to intravenous using. And, yeah, you know, obviously once you start on that drug, mate, you can't expect a great outcome. You know, everything just slowly eventually spirals out of control and you lose everything, you know, and that's exactly what happened to me. I lost, you know, my family, my house, you know, I'd sold off all my bits and pieces, you know, my assets. Like I had a boat and a few cars and a motorbike and this and that. And by the time you know, I think it was maybe 6 to 8 months was my first ever hardcore stint on the meth at the age of 23. And by the end of it, I was pretty well washed up with nothing left, you know. I'd lost everything. And that was that sounds like, you know, rock bottom, but I ended up, you know, moving out and getting my own little flat underneath my uncle. He helped me then get into my own house. So I ended up getting my own place, you know, solely in my name. Still in the same sort of area as I grew up in, and it was about 3 years. I didn't touch the meth for about 3 years after that first episode, and obviously, you know, I'd rebuilt again. I was working, cause not to mention I also lost my job too at during that downfall. But you know, I was working again. I you know, slowly started to build myself up again. I was having the kids regularly. You know, I'd met another woman that sort of helped me ground me again. You know, helped me start having the kids regularly again and whatnot. Long story short, we had a pretty sudden breakup. If I can put it short, she was a crazy bitch. You know, yeah. But anyway, so she was out of the picture, and I don't know. I get asked this question a lot. Why did I turn back to meth? So I just had this. I do not know the answer. You know, if I could go back, I definitely wouldn't have made these choices. But by this stage, you know, there was a few blokes in the area that I'd known that were selling meth and whatnot. And by this stage, too, a few years later, the price had dropped. It was cheap as chips to buy, you know. And I this one day, I just had this feeling come over me. Oh, I'll just go and get 1 point, you know, and we'll leave it at that. If only that was the case. I ended up going and seeing this mate of mine, and he used to blow glass pipes as well. So I got a point and a pipe off this guy. I remember I went back to my house and I was standing in the laundry and I sucked this point into me so quick. And I remember just that my whole scalp went tight, you know, the goosebumps, everything. I remember far out. That's what it feels like. Well, this was the beginning of, pretty much my lowest point. Like I ended up, you know, hitting proper rock bottom through this episode. I'll cut a long story short. I went from picking up maybe half an 8 ball, smoking my little bit, selling the rest so I could get on again. That quickly led to so in the meantime here too, I've started seeing this girl in Melbourne. I might also, I might chuck this bit into. So I started seeing this chick in Melbourne. I was, I'd gone over with my little brother to watch a stand-up comedy show at the Rod Laver Arena with Kevin Hart. The actor Kevin Hart, and my little brother had shouted me over. It was my birthday weekend and whatnot. We ended up getting this tiny little like shoebox hotel room. I think it was like $60 a night, and this room had like 2 single beds and like a desk. It had no TV or anything. It was pretty stingy, sort of like a backpacker type setup, But so my brother and I, we were down in the Melbourne CBD there, and I'd taken a little bit of gear. We call it gear ice, taking a little bit of gear over in my sock. So we had something over there. My brother was using also. Mind you, I'm 5 years older than him, so this is around like my 25th, 26th birthday. So we've gone over and we're in Melbourne Mall, and I think I was in like this little convenience store, news agency type little shop trying to buy a glass pipe. I've come out of this shop and my little brother's talking to this guy. This guy had come up to him. I think he'd come up to him and asked my little brother, "Oh, where'd you get your kicks from?" Or something like that. That's how their sort of conversation kicked off. And long story short, this guy, he looked like, he looked pretty washed up. He was getting around. It was midsummer. He was just in footy shorts, no top. Look, you could tell he wasn't on a great path. And we sort of took him under our wing and took him back up to our hotel. He had a little bit of gear on him as well, and we had a bit of a session in our hotel room. We ended up spending the next sort of 5 days with him over there, and come the last day, and it was a Saturday night, and we had no drugs left. We'd been awake the whole time too, so you can only imagine the sort of come down we were experiencing. And this guy had a connection to get some smack, some heroin, and I'd maybe heard of this on movies or documentaries, but it was never a thing in Tasmania. I still don't think it is, And long story short, we went and met this Vietnamese guy. This guy and my little brother stayed at the hotel room, and he was absolutely filthy on me, bro. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You're going to end up just like our mother. Because by this stage, our mother was, mum and dad had split up, and mum was deep into, intravenous using addiction. And he's like, you're going to end up just like mum. And I think I may have got a bit of weed off this Vietnamese guy and sort of shut my little brother up, because he didn't want me doing it, And if only I had to listen to him, bro. We met this guy and got the stuff and gone back to the hotel room, and I volunteered to go first. I feel like I was very inquisitive about, needles because of mum. But I still, at the end of the day, I made my own decision this night to try it. And so I volunteered to go first. I remember he mixed it up on the bottom of a Coke can. And it was 4 points.
Jesus.
So I had no idea about this shit. I didn't even know what it, had no idea
First
what it
time and he just mixed up 4 points. That's a lot.
Yeah, well, we split it, so I had two and he had two, and
still a lot.
I volunteered. Yeah, man. Yeah, well, what I'm about to tell you will explain that. I volunteered to go first. Obviously, I didn't want him. I'd never stuck a needle in my body at this point ever, and I thought I didn't want him doing it and then trying to do me while he's fucked up. So I went first, and all I remember, bro, it was in my right arm. I literally remember, like, the best way to describe it was like, when you get real dizzy and everything sort of goes when you're real dizzy, it was like that, but it was like upways. So I've gone to stand up and literally like, whoa, and then that's all I remember. I must have collapsed, and the next thing you know, I've woken up with 3 paramedics standing over the top of me and all these stickers all over me. All my top was cut off me and I had all these stickers on me. But I won't lie, bro. I woke up feeling fucking incredible. Like the most crazy euphoric feeling I've ever felt in my life to this day. And I'm laying on the floor in between these 2 beds, and my little brother's on the bed, like fucking bawling his eyes out, like sobbing his heart out. And I'm like, so I started laughing at him, what's going on? Like, what are these paramedics doing here? Like, little did I know, I'd been dead, man. My heart had stopped. My little brother was trying to revive me for the last 15 minutes till the paramedics got there, and
Jesus,
yeah, I ended up not. The paramedics wanted me to go with them back to the hospital, and I was like, nah, I'm right, just leave me alone, sort of thing, and I ended up jumping into bed and going to sleep after they left. And this whole time, I cannot remember where the guy is that did it to me. I don't know if he's in the room, if he's gone, or still don't know. It was all a big blur, but I wake up the next morning at 10 a.m. to someone banging on the hotel door. It was the guy, time to check out. So I've woke up like all of a sudden, like, oh shit, we got pipes and bags and fucking crumbs from drugs laying around all throughout this hotel room. We'd gone hard for the last 5 or 6 days, and I've woken up on the bed. My little brother's asleep on the other bed, and the guy I did it with laying on the floorboards between us. And I've sort of woken up, and I noticed he had a bit of brown fluid coming out of his mouth, and I'd forgotten that we'd even done it the night before, it had sort of slapped me around the head that hard. And anyway, so I've woken my brother up, get up, we've got to get out of here, we've got to clean this room up. Not realising that, I'm slapping old mate on the floor, wake up, bro. He wouldn't wake up, so we continued to clean the room, and I've come back to him, and I ended up picking him up. He was sort of laying on his stomach in the fetal position type thing. It's hard to explain, but I ended up grabbing him off the floor. I sort of grabbed him around here with his back facing to me, and I've picked him up. Oh, wake the fuck up, bro. Like, he wouldn't wake up, and then it just hit me, bro. Like, he was full dead weight. His skin was already cold, and yeah, he was dead, bro. So, me being the big brother, you would have expected me. Yeah, you would have expected me to be the one to, try and revive this guy, man. But I went into shock. I stood there and watched my little brother pump this guy's chest. He had the ambulance on the loudspeaker next to this guy's head and pumping his chest, giving him mouth to mouth. All this brown fluids coming up, going into my brother's mouth and everything. It was hectic. Like, but yeah, he didn't make it, bro. So it was my first experience with needles.
And you continued to go back to use.
So still to this day, I've never ever touched heroin again, and I never ever will. But I was still using ice pretty heavy for the next sort of 12 months, using the pipe, and then this one day I had a bloke living with me he'd moved in as a housemate, helped me pay the rent and this and that, and he just started to use intravenously, and I seen him do it one day, and I was like, dude, give me, I don't know why, but I had one this day, and yeah, again, little did I know that was the start of a hectic journey using intravenously, and I never ever went back to the pipe after that. I used needles for maybe the next 6 years. On and off. There was a few dry spells there where I would, come off it for 6 months, and then I'd be back on it and then off it and on it. It wasn't consistently every day for 6 years, but I'm the sort of guy when I use, bro, I can't just use. I've got to use until I can't use anymore. I've got that
thing,
that mentality about, whatever it is, I like call it greed. I don't know, but I know for a fact I'll become very greedy when there's drugs around, bro. Unfortunately,
Yeah, it's super interesting that a lot of people talk about that, and I've definitely experienced it. That once you start, you can't stop kind of, attitude, like, and it's not like, for me, it wasn't like I consciously did that. It's just sort of how I was, I just turned into like a bit of a Hoover,
Yeah, definitely, bro. I mean, the cocaine's the same. I've had my fair share of the run on the cocaine as well. I'm the same, and I have to have a big, thick,
Yep.
chunky line,
Yep.
and more than everybody else. It's just the way
Yeah.
I am. But yeah, yeah, I had a couple of other relationships, just small little relationships. Oh, sorry, yeah. So that's happened in Melbourne, and anyway, yeah, I've gone home. I've ended up continuing to see this chick in Melbourne. I'd met up with her the first time during those 5 days I was over there with my brother, and she was a user as well. And but she ended up linking me up with a guy in Melbourne where I could get extremely cheap ounces. Like a third of the price of what they're worth back in Tassie. Um, so I've met this guy. He's a pretty
Yep.
solid connection, I may as well say, and um, yeah. So I've decided one day I'm gonna get an ounce and put it in my undies and take it back to Tassie. I was shitting myself, bro. I won't lie. I remember going through security at Melbourne Airport, and um, I had it like tucked right up in like my gooch area, and um, yeah, I've gotten through. I was like, fucking hell, that was simple. That was
Wow.
so easy. So the next week, the next week I've gone over and I've loaded up
Wow.
5 ounces, off this guy, and
Just a quick one to interrupt the show, guys. Today's episode is brought to you by Connection Based Living, which is our outpatient recovery coaching program for people who are struggling with addictive patterns, addictions, however you want to label it. But we do things a little bit differently. Okay. So we help people to get recovery without having to go to rehab and without having to check out of your life for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. You can achieve recovery in a different way and with a different lens and think about it in a different um, belief system structure as well. So that's connection based living. That's what we do. Book a call. We'll see if we can help if that's of interest to you. That's the main function. We just approach things differently all round. So we approach the relationship that you have to substances differently. We explain a bit more about that on the phone. The method of delivery is a little bit different. The way in which we take you guys through exercises and actions and stuff like that you have to take to get change in your life is a little bit different as well. I'll explain that over the phone too. But it's really, the tools all laid out there for you to pick up and use in your life. And when you do put them into your life, you can achieve recovery without having to go through those traditional frameworks and methods and stuff like that. It's not for everyone. It's not for everyone. It doesn't fit everyone. So please book a call and have a chat to us, and we'll see if we're the right fit. But if it is the right fit, we definitely can help and definitely can help you to change things up and head in the right direction. So if there's anybody out there struggling, or you have a family member that's struggling, just please reach out. First step is have a chat to us, and we'll see how we can help. All right, back to the show, everybody. Peace.
yeah, and again, straight back through, and the third week again, done 5 again, and um, by this stage, I'm turning it over. So like I've gone from, like I said, ticking half an 8 ball to now selling my own ounces within a period of maybe
Yeah.
3 months, 3 or 4 months. Not giving a fuck who knows what. Little did I know I'm being watched the whole time by
Wow.
police. So um, I've gone back over on the 5th week. This is, I was kissed on the dick by fairy this day, bro. I've gone back over on the 5th week, and this time I had 20 grand cash on me. I was going to buy 7 ounces. I was going to, load up another two. And God, mate, I still to this day, I don't know why I was so lucky. This guy that I was getting it off, he was in Sydney, and he wasn't going to be back in time before my flight out of Melbourne. And, everything was just hectic. I was messaging uh, a person back in Hobart saying, like, look, it's fallen through. Do you know anybody I can even just get 1 ounce off? I didn't want to come back. I was letting a lot of people down in Tassie. And uh, long story short, I ended up jumping on the plane with nothing but the 20K, and I used to always book the front row on the plane, like row one, seat C. So I was the aisle at the front. So I was always the first off the plane, anyway, we've touched down in Hobart, and I was I was like, filthy that I had nothing. I knew that I was going to be letting a lot of people down. I didn't even have anything for myself, and like I'm balls deep into, like I said, intravenous using and whatnot. I touched down in Hobart, and I'm hopping off the plane. I'm walking along the tarmac towards the airport, and um, I spotted this guy, and he was plain clothes and whatnot. I thought, fuck, he's not even wearing high vis. He doesn't look like he works at the airport, And so as I've gotten closer, he sort of come up and he sort of grabbed me, and I had a real cocky attitude too, like my head had just gone huge after going for, like I said, half an 8 ball to sell my own ounces. I was, one of those dickheads, like. But anyway, he's grabbed me and I sort of like, don't fucking touch me. I knew I didn't have anything on me, and anyway, he's like, you can keep walking and not make a scene, or I can just arrest you right here. Their reason for pulling me up was I'd missed court the week before, so I had a warrant out for my arrest for just something minor. And little did I know, I'd been dobbed in by the person that I'd messaged, trying to get them to line me up even 1 ounce, a few hours before. So yeah, I only found that out later on. But anyway, they've taken me into this. So there was end up being two of these cops, and they were detectives, obviously, and they've taken me into this. I didn't even make it into the terminal. They've taken me in this like half renovated, like room, like half plastered out room off the side of the airport, and they full strip searched. And when I say strip searched, bro, I've never, I've been to prison and whatnot, and I've never been strip searched like these guys strip searched me in the airport. It was bad, They made me like right down to pulling my foreskin back a lot, and it was like, but yeah, they ended up getting me with the 20,000. I had 10K in my backpack, and I had $5,000 in each shoe. It was a bit embarrassing when they made me take my shoes off and they seen the cash, all rubber banded up and stuff. And they ended up, taking the money and taking my phone. Well, like I said, I didn't give a shit. Like I wish I did back, like thinking back now, but like I said, I was so laser focused on becoming the biggest drug dealer. I didn't even look twice beside or behind me if I was being watched. And so they've got my phone. That was the worst thing. I was just so stupid with my phone. Everything was in there. Long story short, they've taken me back to the Hobart police station, video interviewed me, give me the option to agree for them to go through my house, or they were going to lock me up that night, get a warrant, and go through it the next day. I was hanging out, man. I was like, no, you go through my house. I haven't been there for the last few days. I've been in Melbourne, so I can't promise you, I can't tell you what's there, sort of thing. And so yeah, they've taken me back home. Little did I know, when they've got me at the airport, there was actually another couple of detectives that was going through my house. My housemate had given permission. Well, they'd gone there with a warrant. And yeah, gone through. So they'd taken all my security system out of my ceiling, and I might also mention throughout all this time, right back to when I was with the kid's mother, early 20s, I always grew weed. Seems to be a common thing down there in Tassie, a lot of people do it. So I always sort of had that little bit of a financial backup, you may as well say. And anyway, so I'd had a crop in, this whole time, and my housemate had pulled it for me while I was in Melbourne this time. But anyway, I've gone back to the house of these cops, realised that my house had already been gone through. I had firearms and everything stashed throughout this house, and touch wood, luckily they didn't find them, but they got me with a pound of weed, a bunch of glassware, and I think they scraped up maybe around about an 8 ball, just little dribs and drabs that were throughout my house, typical trap house. And so from there on, I was given a court date for a few months down the track and whatnot, and bailed. And I can tell you now, man, this is when I started to really experience drug-induced
Yep.
psychosis. You know, so the police that got me at the airport, they took me back to the Hobart cop shop in a white SUV. And at this point, I was riding around a high horsepower road bike everywhere, you know, and I'm riding this road bike around, you know, days after being caught, and I swear to God, every single white SUV that I was seeing, bro, was them, and I'd think I was in chases and this and that. And it was all so real because I'd never experienced psychosis before. So everything that was happening was so freaking real, man. Um, you know, and anyway, I ended up, within about 3 weeks of being done, I ended up, the chick that I was seeing in Melbourne, I ended up moving over and moving in with her, you know, and I spent, when I got there, we both of us, we were off it for the first sort of 8 months. I was there for 12 months. The first 8 months we were clean, you know, we got a nice house and, you know, I was working again. You know, I've always liked to wheel and deal in cars and shit, you know, so I'd had a nice couple of cars, you know, my road bike, everything like that. And, and then come one time we both agreed to get on, you know, let's just do it one time. And we both did it intravenously, and I can tell you now the next 4 months of my time in Melbourne were fucking, I laugh, man, because it's, you know, I don't really know what else to do. It was, you picture being in a city where you don't know anybody, you know, and I'd have an argument with her because we'd get on together and completely get, you know, wig out on each other, get paranoid on each other, and we just couldn't be around each other when we were high. So I'd take off and I'd drive around for days, you know, using flat out just by myself, you know, in a place that I knew nothing about or I had no idea where I was. And the psychosis just grew and grew, and I ended up going back to Tassie for a weekend one time to see my kids. And while I was there, I just had this gut feeling, you know, like I said, we used to always wig out on each other, but I had this gut feeling that she was, you know, doing the dirty on me. And so I'd done the old, you know, hacked into her Snapchat while I was in Tassie. And, well, you know, the intuition was true. You know, I come across a photo in her Snapchat memories where it was only from the day before where she, it was this guy. So this guy that she linked me up with at the beginning to get these ounces off, it's a photo of him. So the photo is sort of taken from back here between her legs, and you can see him laying across the foot of the bed, you know, with his old fella out. And you can also see in the background, like, all my clothes and shit hanging in the wardrobe, you know. So I was right, you know, my gut feeling was right. I had this crazy head about me, you know, like I said to my dad, like, I'm going back over there and I'm going to kill this motherfucker, you know. Like, I was just like, that was all I could see was like, I'm going to get this prick, you know. And Dad's like, you're not going back over there. He knew of these guys, and they were, you know, Lebanese guys, a bit of a crew, and, you know, they were cooks and everything like that. And, and so Dad's like, I'm not letting you go back over there, you know, they'll fucking kill you. Like, you know, it ain't Tassie over there, mate. It's the big world, you know. And so 3 weeks went by. You know, it ended up, obviously I wasn't using back in Tassie, so I was, you know, 3 weeks' time, I felt like I was good again. And I've gone back over, and cut a long story short, I went back to a house that we had, and the whole house was packed up, man. All of my shit was stacked in the garage, and all my vehicles and shit were still there, but the house was empty. And, you know, so I drove straight to her work, and she'd quit her job. So I went to, you know, her daughter's school, and her daughter had been pulled out of school, all within a 3 week period. And to this day, I still never ever spoken a word or seen or heard nothing from her. So yeah, she sort of done the dirty, packed up, and
Did the
did
runner.
the runner.
Yeah.
You know, but so I spent the next 2-3 weeks over there, absolutely ruined myself. You know, I sold off all my vehicles and everything I had, and literally, you know, was like, I'm 6'5". You know, I was sitting at about 68, 70 kilo. You know, at 6'5", there was nothing of me. And, and Dad's ringing me, get your fucking ass back on a plane, get back here, you know, um, you're going to die. I was hanging around in Ballarat, with some pretty hectic guys up in Ballarat. These guys are actually being convicted of murder since they're doing life sentences as we speak. So you can only imagine where my life was heading in Melbourne. Yeah. So, I've gone back, and this is where I had a good friend of mine, shout out Rocky. He was part of a motorcycle club, and I was pretty washed up at this stage, and he sort of took me under his wing and pulled me into this club, and I ended up spending the next 6 months living at this big clubhouse, and I thought it was all well and good, but little did I know, like I had the reputation to be able to move drugs quick in Tassie, and I was straight back into it, moving drugs pretty heavily, and and then there come this one time where, there was a bit of an in-club war, this chapter with chapter type thing, and I won't go too deep into this, but we were confronted by this other crew, and there was a knife and stuff pulled, and I went to sort of jump in the middle and say, hey, just settle down, and next thing, fucking tonk, I got hit around the side of the head. Instantly, it didn't knock me out, but it dropped me. It got me off balance, sort of thing, and just the noise of it. It sounded like a steel baseball bat. That's what I thought I'd been hit with. And as I've hit the ground, and I've looked up, and it was a pistol. This fucking big, ugly, scary looking bike. He's got a pistol to my head, and I sort of had a bit of a top knot hairstyle at the time, and he's fucking grabbed me by the bun and pulled me up and put the gun in my ribs, and yeah, man, I if I can put it straight, like I like to think, that I was a pretty staunch sort of guy, mate. But when you're put in that situation, I tell you now, I've never shit myself so hard in my life. I literally watched my life flash before me, and yeah, and I made the decision right there and then to like fuck this life. I give up. I left the club that day and never looked back. But the weeks leading on after that, I was completely homeless. My mum was in jail. My dad was so anti-drug. He was so over my bullshit. Wouldn't even answer the phone to me or anything. He was just like, I don't want anything to do with you until you clean yourself up. But I tell this story a lot. I remember one night it was so freaking cold in Tassie, middle of winter. This was my absolute rock bottom moment. It was absolutely bucketing down with rain, like roaring down with rain, and I'd gotten to the point where I literally had nowhere to go. No friends, no family. Like I was literally homeless. I couldn't get a shelter over my head if I tried. And I remember I was sitting down behind this big green hydro box thing, you see them on the sides of the roads with the big danger signs on them. I was sitting down behind this, I had a suitcase, and I had not a cent to my name, no food. I was starving, and it was fucking raining, bro, and I was in a t-shirt, and I literally was like, I was never ever raised in a Christian family or raised to believe in God or anything like that, but I felt like this was my only option, was like to pray, and I did, man. I was bawling my eyes out, and I prayed to whatever it was up there to help me or kill me, like take me out or freaking help me, and might have been another hour or so of the rain, and then I remember like the sky cleared up, and it was like something you'd see in a movie, it was like, I think I may have ended up at another trap house after that, but at this stage you can picture, like, I've gone from, the top of the food chain in the drug world to now I'm homeless, absolutely boned out, riding around on a freaking stolen mountain bike. Just goes to show, one end of the spectrum to the other. Like, but yeah, I've cut a long story short. Again, I ended up getting with another chick, and while I was at my lowest, and she'd just gotten out of prison for an armed robbery, so you can sort of get a bit of a
Yeah.
picture of the sort of
Yeah.
chick she was. stuck stuck in the same sort of world I was living, but prison had sort of helped her get a place. She ended up getting a little housing commission unit down on the um, eastern shore of Hobart, a suburb by the name of Rokeby. It's a pretty rough area. There's a lot of lads in jail that are from there, and there's a pretty notorious area. Well, she got put into this little flat, and I moved in with her, and we were just toxic from the beginning, bro. Yeah, we pretty much got with each other. I feel for the
Yeah.
company, and help each other get on to drugs and this and that, and we were always having verbal arguments, and the police were called and whatnot. And then I ended up getting a family violence order put on me just through verbal arguments. There was never ever anything physical. But I'd had that put on me. I had nowhere to go, so I'd go back. We'd be all right for a week or so, and then we'd have another blow up. The police would be called. I'd get done for breaching the order, so I'd get locked up for the night. I'd get out the next day. I'd go straight back to her. This continued on for 6 to 8 months. Until I think I ended up accruing about 9 breaches on this order, and we had another fight this day, and the police were called and whatnot, and I mean, there was a bit of like a snake driveway into this bunch of flats, and from our back doorstep you could see the start of the driveway. And I've seen the police pull in. There was 2 carloads, like 2 cars pull in, and so I was out of there. I've gone straight out. I knew that this was my last chance, like I had no more chances. So I've gone straight out our backyard, straight over our back fence, straight through the neighbour's back door, through his lounge room, and then out his front door, and I've just legged it up this big bush hill, where there was burnt out cars, and you can sort of visualise this area. It was pretty rough. And these police are chasing me on foot. Like, I don't know exactly how many there were. I didn't really look back too many times, but I assume there would have been maybe 5 or 6 police officers on foot. Anyway, so I've taken off, and I was, like I said, I was skinny, I was quick, I was fast. I got away from these cops, and I hid underneath this burnt out car, and I literally laid there, bro. Like, the bottom of the car was on my chest. I laid there for about 3 hours, I reckon, trying not to even breathe, and these cops are walking around, and you can run but you can't hide with their torches, and it's starting to get dark. And anyway, I got away, and I spent the next 3 weeks on the run. I was sort of jumping from Dad's house to my brother's house to my uncle's house, and every time I'd leave one of these places, the police, I'd get a phone call from Dad. Oh, the fucking cops just come here, they're on your case. Same deal with my brothers and uncles. So they were literally right on my tail everywhere I went. I don't know why, but I guess I was lonely and knew that I was getting locked away, and I ended up going back to this chick's house for the final time, and we'd sort of made up, and we'd gone to bed, and I woke up to, Mr. Tonks under arrest, a bedroom full of police, and they finally got me, and that's when I went to jail, bro.
Wow.
Yeah.
What year was that?
Obviously I had a lot of
2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'd gone back to court. I missed this little bit out, but I'd gone back to court after I'd moved to Melbourne for getting caught at the airport. They give me a 12-month suspended sentence with a 2-year good behaviour. So during that 2 years, bro, I fucked up heaps. Obviously I got this family violence order, and I'd been caught driving and lick sticks and this and that during that 2 years, so I knew I was going to jail. I thought straight away I was doing the 12 months. But yeah, I got in there, and I remember like driving in there in the prison van, man, and like my old man, I should have mentioned at the beginning, he, even to this day, he still has a pretty notorious name throughout, Hobart, as a violent guy, a violent pub fighter. That's sort of where I picked up a lot of the violent nature was from him. but he sort of said to me, he goes, look, mate, get in there, clean yourself up, get your time out of the way and come out and start fresh, And I was like, Dad, like I've got enemies in there, like obviously I was part of this bike club and there's rival gang members in there and this and that. And so Dad said, mate, you can handle yourself. Like, as soon as you walk in there, mate, anyone says anything, just hit the closest bloke and then punch everybody in arm's reach and show them who you are. So I'm driving in this prison van and, gone through the big gates and then the second set of big gates. And I'm like full shaken. I'm thinking it's about to happen. I've got to do this. I've got no option now. Like, and yeah, so I remember I hopped out of the van and went through the reception area, got all my gear, and then been let into the prison. And I know, like when you rock up there's prisoners all standing there waiting to see who the new fresh meat is, coming in, and they're all standing there and stuff. And I'm thinking, like, oh, it's going to happen, And anyway, I've gone let through, and the first thing someone said to me, Tonksy, how are you, brother? Tonksy, how you going? And I was like, oh, fuck, this ain't as bad as what I thought, Yeah, so I ended up, pretty quickly finding my feet in there, and again, I was dealing in, as they call the prison currency, the bupe and the prescription pills and that you get prescribed in there and shit. And so pretty quickly, I ended up with a pretty decked out cell and all the good stuff in there. And but I was still on remand, so I think I got about 5 months in and was finally going up to be sentenced this day. And like I just expected to be, I'd let myself believe that I was doing this 12 months, so I was settled. And yeah, I went to court and they ended up resuspending the rest of the sentence. So I was let out in a week. And I shit you not, bro, I was devastated that I was getting out, because I was thinking, fuck, I've got nothing on the outside. By this stage I'd put on weight. I was nearly 100 kilo again, and I was looking healthy, and my mental health was great. And yeah, I got let out a week later, and yeah, and then like I started to, I stayed off the drugs, started to, hit up the CBD and, start to mingle with girls again. And yeah, that was when I met, my now still beautiful partner, Beck, on a night out one night, and she'd recognise me from, are you the guy that used to sell all the pills back in the day, And yeah, so we kicked it off, bro, and yeah, she's been a huge factor to, along with my kids, and we also share a little daughter now that's just about to turn 2. Yeah, she's been a huge factor to keeping me grounded the last sort of 5 years for sure. I did have a bit of a relapse at the start of this year, sort of the end of last year, start of this year. I had a few personal issues go on, and what did I do? I used the fucking drugs as a blocker, as an excuse. I had a mate commit suicide and stuff, but I quickly cleaned myself back up from that. Yeah. And yeah, with the help of Beck and our beautiful little daughter, yeah, I see nothing but light these days.
Man,
bro.
That's awesome. Has it been hard to stay away from, in those early days, getting out of prison and, having a new relationship and stuff? Like I imagine it was probably difficult to stay away from the old habits and patterns and behaviors and stuff.
Well, what I did, right, is so, I'd gotten out of jail. Like I said, I was confident in myself again. I looked good again. I was, my mental health was on fire. It was great. And then, I pulled myself closer to, I don't know, I don't really like to call it God, but I sort of, there was something, bro. There's still to this day, there's something bigger than, I believe there's something bigger than us, and something that's keeping, I really am lost for words when I try to talk about it, but I do believe in something greater. And so I use that in prison as well, I I had a crack at reading the Bible and this and that, and I ended up just finding a good way of living, and through having faith in something, and I remember in jail. This is a funny story. I'd pray. I'd think, "Fuck, why not?" At work that time, I was stuck behind that big hydro bin, and I prayed for love, strength, and financial stabilization, Um, and it's funny because all those things that I prayed for happened. So I got out of jail, but they happened in the wrong ways. And this is where, whatever it is up there, there's definitely an opposition to it because like I said, I prayed for love. I got out of prison. I found the most beautiful girl, that at the time I felt was way above my league, and I also prayed for, financial, to be stable financially. And I had an opportunity fall straight into my hands as soon as I got out of prison. A guy ticked me a big lot of cocaine, and I'd never had an issue with cocaine. So I thought, I could move this pretty quick and make a lot of money. And I did, I was using it a lot, but still to this day, I wouldn't say I ever had an issue with it, even though there was points where I used it heavily. But I feel like it was always because it was there. I never ever paid for it or anything like that. So I went from fucking, with the coke, at one point there I was, dealing tens of thousands of dollars a week, with it. And, but that then led me into, I had all the cash. I started to use ice again, and if I can cut the story down a bit, my partner got wind of it and, pretty quickly packed up and moved. She's got a lot of family in Darwin, so she, without even sort of knowing what she was doing, she packed up and left me, and that was a kick in the guts. And now this is where I prayed for strength, So now I've just lost the love of my life. We still stayed in contact. We still was talking every day and stuff. And, she wasn't there permanently. She just wanted me to clean myself up and, and put in the same sort of work she was putting into the relationship. But when she left me and I went hardcore for about 3 weeks, it was probably 3 weeks I didn't sleep for, and I was an absolute shell of myself again. But I quickly turned it around, I thought, like, this girl's still giving me a chance, like, do something with it, and luckily I had my mum, by this point she was maybe a year or two clean from a 20-year addiction herself, but she'd moved up here to the Gold Coast with her still current partner, and cleaned herself up, and like I hadn't spoke to mum for years, the last time I spoke to mum, she had no teeth and, she was pretty washed up, and I've just started speaking to her again, and, she's got a fresh set of pearly whites and didn't even look like her, and long story short, she's got me on a plane up here and like, come up here, mate, I'll help you. I know too well what you're going through, and she did, bro. The last person on this planet I thought would ever be able to help me was my mum, and she did. I lived with her for a couple of months. And then I just rented a room off these Indians up here, and during that time, I hadn't touched nothing, and my partner moved over here. So she went from Darwin back to Tassie, packed all her stuff up, and then drove to Melbourne. I flew down to Melbourne and met her in Melbourne, and we drove up together. And yeah, man, we moved up here to ride in the housing crisis, and we were trying to get a house. Like I said, we were renting a room off these Indians. It was just wasn't working, we felt uncomfortable in our own space, sort of thing. But we were going to house inspections, just rental inspections, and there was like 150 to 200 people lining up to inspect these houses. It was like, we're never going to get a house. Like, we were this close to going back to Tassie, until, she come across a private rental on like Facebook Marketplace, I think it was. And we went and viewed it, and bang, we got it, and I'm sitting in it right now. So
Love it, man. It's a very cool story. I just to finish up, because I want to have you back on at some stage and check in and just kind of see how you're doing,
yeah.
because I got to run to the next meeting. But what do you tell people now? Like when you speak to people and they ask you like, how did you do it? What do you say to them? Like, what's your advice to people?
My advice to people, I think it stems back to how you were parented, like how your parents were, you know, and not putting my parents down by all means. You know, they were young parents; they were 17 when I was born. But I feel like, you know, good parenting. If you come from good parenting, then you're less likely to go down that path or mingle with those people that eventually lead you down that path. You know. But I feel like, you know, when it comes to, like, I have a lot of people message me on the daily, you know, asking, and the most common question is, how do I get clean? Now, without sounding like a dick, I don't have the answer for that, bro. You know, I don't, you know, all it comes down to is you have got to want it yourself. You know, you've got to want to get clean, bro, or you'll never get clean. You can't expect somebody to, you know, click their fingers and then all of a sudden you're done. You don't get them cravings. Like, you know, apart from my recent relapse, you know, I've had about 4 years up my sleeve, you know, and mate, still to this day, you know, it crosses my mind. I'm not going to lie, you know, I feel like it's an addiction forever. It's just sort of how you deal with it up here.
Yeah, 100%. I love it, mate. It's actually great advice. You know, somebody said to me, it really annoyed me when I first kind of went on the journey the same to get sober as well. But like, you know, I remember asking them like, how do you get clean? And they said, you get clean. And I'm like, fuck you, man.
You do,
but
yeah. It's a pretty simple, yeah. You know, and like what I always say too is when I was deep in addiction, you know, I'd come across, you know, social media reels and whatnot that would, you know, open my eyes a lot. But I can't recall any time that I ever messaged somebody asking how do I get clean. Yeah, you know, I was lucky enough to be able to do it on my own too. You know, I'm a very strong willpower guy in all aspects of my life. You know, and willpower, mate, played a huge part in it for me. I truly wanted to. You know, like I'm a father to 3 kids, and you know, like my eldest was, you know, heading towards the end of primary school, and you know, her dad's still fried. Like, I feel like the kids were a big part of it, and just that want, that want, and just sticking to it, bro. You know, every time one of them thoughts pop up to use, or you know, and I'd have nightmares and everything. Like I'd use in my sleep, like in a nightmare, and I'd wake up to literally feeling like I've just shot up, you know, and that happened for months and months after not using, you know, and it used to freak me right out. I'd wake up with hot sweats. I'd literally wake up and feel like I was high, you know, for a short moment, and then I'd realise, you know, but just occupy your mind with something else, you know. I know it's easier said than done, but you know, like exercise, bro. Exercise is a huge one for me. You know, I'm currently just started a bodybuilding journey, you know, so that's definitely a big one that keeps me
so finding you know? Something else, you know, to fill the void as well, like not only physically getting the positive endorphins and all that, but something else that creates purpose and meaning and another focus in your life. Yeah,
definitely. And don't rely on other people. You've got to do it yourself. 100%.
Man, you have a huge story. And like, as I said, I've been following you on social media for a little while, and I couldn't wait to talk, and I didn't realize a lot of this stuff, you know, so it's awesome to hear like someone with such a big story, you know, being able to turn it around despite all of that. So congratulations, man. I don't mean that to sound patronizing or anything.
No,
but
100%.
yeah, it's awesome,
I appreciate
it's
it.
awesome.
I appreciate it, bro. I might also add too, I run a podcast, Tonksy Media podcast, that, that's helped me a lot too, bro. Talking to other people and hearing other people's stories of struggle, and they ain't all my episodes, they ain't all around, this sort of conversation. I've interviewed people from professional athletes to heart transplant patients,
Wow.
right through to bank robbers and recovering addicts. So, but that's helped me a lot too. Always having something keeping me occupied, doing the editing and things like that.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome. No, that's awesome. Well, man, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. Where can you just mentioned there the podcast? Where can people find you if they are picking up what you're putting down?
So Instagram, bro, I'm just Tonksy Media Podcast, one word. It's got the blue tick, so it's pretty easy to find. I'm just Tonksy on TikTok. My TikTok's starting to go all right. Facebook, Braden Tonks, and YouTube, Tonksy Media Productions. Now that's the base business that I run, the Tonksy Media Productions, and then I branch off the podcast off that sort of thing. So
awesome. Okay, cool. Well, we'll include all of that in the description and all that kind of stuff so people can find you easily. But hey, thanks again for coming on, man. And we'll have to have you back to get a follow up and see how you're going. It's awesome.
For sure, brother. Thanks for having me, mate. I appreciate it.
Peace, everybody. Have a good day.